The stars outside the observation deck were quiet and cold. Captain Daniel Carter stood with his hands behind his back, watching the endless darkness of space stretch before him. He had made this journey many times before. The Vega Corridor was a long and lonely path through the galaxy, but it was the fastest way to reach the outer colonies. Behind him, the bridge of the USS Ironclad hummed with the soft sounds of working machines. Crew members moved between their stations, checking readings and monitoring systems. It was a calm night, like most nights on a cargo escort mission. "Captain, all systems are running normally," said Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a voice that carried natural authority. She had served under Carter for 5 years, and he trusted her completely. "Good," Carter replied without turning around. "How are our passengers?" "The colonists are settled in. Most of them are sleeping. The children were excited earlier, but they've calmed down now." Carter nodded. 300 civilians were aboard the Ironclad. Families with young children, engineers, doctors, and farmers. All of them were heading to New Providence Colony to start new lives. It was Carter's job to make sure they arrived safely. The Ironclad was not a warship. At least, it did not look like one. From the outside, it appeared to be a simple cargo vessel with thick hull plating and modest engines. Other ships in the corridor would see it and think nothing special of it. That was exactly what Earth Command wanted. 15 years ago, a human colony ship called the Morning Star had been attacked in the same corridor. Pirates from a species called the had captured the ship and taken everyone aboard. Men, women, and children had been sold into slavery across a dozen worlds. By the time Earth forces arrived, there was nothing left but debris and silence. After that day, humanity changed its approach to space travel. They stopped building ships that looked weak. They started building ships that only looked weak. "Ma'am, I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors," said Ensign Torres from the tactical station. He was young, barely 23 years old, but he had the fastest reflexes on the ship. Morgan walked over to his station and looked at the screen. 6 dots were appearing at the edge of sensor range, moving fast. "Captain," she said, her voice suddenly tense. "We have contacts, 6 vessels approaching from bearing 275. Carter turned from the window and walked to the center of the bridge. His face showed no fear, only focus. "Can you identify them?" Torres worked his controls quickly. "Configuration matches Raider-class vessels, sir, armed and shielded." A cold silence fell over the bridge. Everyone knew what ships meant. Everyone remembered the stories. "Time to intercept?" Carter asked. 4 minutes, sir." Carter looked at Morgan. She looked back at him. No words were needed between them. They had prepared for this moment many times in training. "Sound general quarters," Carter ordered. "Move all civilians to the inner compartments. I want this ship ready for battle in 2 minutes." Alarms began to ring throughout the Ironclad. Crew members rushed to their stations. In the lower decks, families were quickly guided to the reinforced rooms at the center of the ship. Children cried and parents held them close, not understanding what was happening but knowing it was serious. On the bridge, Chief Petty Officer activated the ship's combat AI. The system was called Sentinel, and it could process thousands of calculations per second. Hands moved across his console as the AI came to life. "Sentinel is online and ready, Captain," reported. The 6 ships dropped out of hyperspace in a perfect formation around the Ironclad. They were sleek and dangerous, covered in dark armor and bristling with weapons. Each ship was twice the size of the human vessel. A transmission came through. The main screen flickered, and suddenly the bridge crew was looking at a commander. He was tall and reptilian, with green scales and yellow eyes that showed no warmth. His mouth was full of sharp teeth, and he wore armor decorated with the bones of his enemies. "Human vessel," the alien said in a deep, rumbling voice. "I am Warlord Al of the Dominion. You are surrounded, and power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. If you surrender now, some of you may be allowed to live." Carter stood perfectly still. He showed no reaction to the threat. Al continued, "We have studied your kind. We know humans prefer talk to war. We know you value your lives above your pride. Do not be foolish. Resistance will only bring death." On the bridge, Tors looked nervous. Morgan's jaw was tight with anger, kept his eyes on his console, ready for orders. Carter finally spoke. His voice was calm and steady. "Warlord Al, this is Captain Daniel Carter of the United Earth Navy. I will give you one chance to leave this corridor. Take your ships and go. If you do not, I cannot promise the safety of your crews." For a moment there was silence. Then Al began to laugh. It was a harsh, ugly sound that echoed across the bridge. "You threaten me," the warlord said between laughs. "One small ship against 6 warships. Your species is even more stupid than we believed." Behind Al, his crew joined in the laughter. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had broken countless species. The idea that one human cargo ship could threaten them was the funniest thing they had heard in years. Carter did not smile. He did not react at all. "You have 60 seconds to withdraw," he said. "This is your only warning." Al stopped laughing. His yellow eyes narrowed with anger. "Foolish human. When we board your ship, I will make you watch as we take your people. I will sell your children to the mining colonies and your women to the pleasure houses. And you will live just long enough to know that your pride destroyed them all." The transmission ended. Morgan stepped closer to Carter. "Sir, their weapons are charging." Carter nodded slowly. He looked around at his crew. These were good people, brave people. They had trained for years for a moment like this. "All hands," he said quietly, "prepare for combat." The countdown began in his head. 60 seconds, 59, 58. Outside, the ships moved into attack position. They had no idea what was waiting for them. They saw a cargo ship. They saw easy prey. They saw another species that would bend and break before their power. They did not see the hidden armor. They did not see the concealed weapons. They did not see the fire burning in the eyes of every human on that bridge. 30 seconds, 29, 28. The stars were still cold and quiet, but they would not stay quiet for long. The bridge of the ironclad was silent except for the soft beeping of computers. Every crew member stood at their station, eyes fixed on their screens. Outside the ship, 6 warships waited like wolves surrounding wounded prey. But the ironclad was not wounded, and it was certainly not prey. Captain Daniel Carter watched the countdown in his mind. 20 seconds remained. He had given them a chance to leave. They had laughed at him. They had threatened his crew and the innocent families sleeping in the compartments below. Some people would call what happened next revenge. Carter called it justice. "Tors," he said calmly, "report on enemy positions." Ensign Tors studied his tactical display. His fingers moved quickly across the controls. "All 6 ships are in attack formation, sir. They're spreading out to surround us. It looks like they're planning to disable our engines first, then board from multiple points." Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan nodded. "Standard slaver tactics. They want the ship mostly intact so they can take the cargo and passengers." "They won't be taking anyone," Carter replied. Down in the passenger compartments, 300 colonists huddled together in the reinforced rooms. Parents held their children close. Elderly couples gripped each other's hands. They could hear the alarms ringing through the ship, and they knew something terrible was happening. A young mother named Laura held her 6-year-old son against her chest. The boy's name was Sam, and he was trembling with fear. "Mommy, what's happening?" he whispered. Laura stroked his hair gently. "The captain is keeping us safe, sweetheart. Everything will be okay." She did not know if that was true, but she had to believe it. Back on the bridge, the countdown reached 0. Carter took a deep breath. He looked at Morgan. She gave him a small nod. They had prepared for this moment for years. Every drill, every simulation, every sleepless night studying tactics had led to this second. "Begin transformation sequence," Carter ordered. Chief Petty Officer entered the command into his console. Throughout the ship, machines began to move. Hidden panels along the hull started to slide open. What looked like simple cargo containers split apart to reveal weapons that had been sleeping inside. The ironclad was waking up. On the lead ship, a sensor officer noticed something strange on his screen. "Warlord, the human ship is changing. Their hull is opening." Al leaned forward in his command chair. "What do you mean, opening?" Before the officer could answer, the transformation was complete. The ironclad no longer looked like a cargo vessel. 12 turrets now extended from its hull, each one capable of firing metal slugs at incredible speeds. 4 plasma lance batteries glowed with blue energy, ready to burn through armor like paper. The ship's engines flared brighter as extra power flowed to weapons and shields. Al's yellow eyes went wide. "What is this?" On the human bridge, Tors reported, "All weapons online and ready, Captain. Sentinel has targeting solutions for all 6 enemy vessels." Carter stood straight. His voice was steady and cold. "Fire!" The first burst crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second. The vessel on the right side of the formation never had time to react. The metal slugs tore through its shields like they were made of cloth. The ship's hull ripped open, and fire exploded from within. In the space of 3 heartbeats, the first enemy ship was dead. The remaining vessels scattered in panic. Their commanders screamed orders into their communicators. This was not what they had expected. This was not how the raid was supposed to go. "Second target acquired," Tors announced. "Plasma lances ready." "Fire," Carter said again. 4 beams of superheated plasma streaked across the void. They struck the second ship directly in its engine section. For a moment, the ship seemed frozen. Then its reactor core exploded in a ball of white light that briefly turned night into day. 2 ships destroyed in under 30 seconds. On the Warlord's flagship, Al was shouting at his crew, "Return fire, destroy that ship." The 4 remaining vessels began firing everything they had. Green energy beams and missiles raced toward the ironclad. The human ship shook as some shots found their mark. "Damage report," Morgan called out. Checked his screens. Minor hull damage on decks 7 and 9, shields holding at 73%. Sentinel is redistributing power to compensate. Carter nodded. "Continue the attack, focus on the 2 escort ships." Tors worked his controls with speed and precision. The thundered again and again. Each shot was guided by Sentinel's calculations, finding weak points in enemy armor. Down in engineering, Chief Ben and his team worked frantically to keep power flowing to the weapons. Sparks flew from damaged conduits. Smoke filled the air, but no one stopped working. "Come on, you beautiful ship," muttered as he rerouted power from non-essential systems. "Show them what you can do." The third ship tried to flee. Its captain had seen enough. He ordered full power to engines, hopping to escape into hyperspace. He almost made it. A spread of slugs caught the ship as it was turning. The shots punched through its rear armor and destroyed its hyperdrive. The ship drifted helplessly, unable to run or fight. The 4th escort vessel made a desperate charge at the ironclad. Its captain decided that if he was going to die, he would take the humans with him. He aimed his ship directly at the human vessel, planning to ram it at full speed. Morgan saw the move on her tactical display. "Sir, that ship is on a collision course." Carter's expression did not change. "Tors, stop it." The young ensign took a breath. His fingers danced across the controls. The plasma lances fired once, twice, 3 times. Each shot hit the charging ship with perfect accuracy. The vessel broke apart less than 200 meters from the ironclad. Burning debris scattered harmlessly into space. 4 ships were now destroyed or disabled. Only Al's flagship and 1 escort remained. On the flagship, the warlord stared at his in disbelief. His hands gripped the arms of his chair so hard that his claws left marks in the metal. "Impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." His sensor officer spoke with a shaking voice. "Warlord, their weapons are tracking us. We cannot defeat this ship." Al's pride had been broken. His dreams of conquest had turned to ash. He did the only thing he could think of. He opened a communication channel. "Human vessel, we surrender. I repeat, we surrender. Please cease fire." On the ironclad's bridge, the crew heard the message. Some of them smiled. Others remained focused on their stations. The battle was not over yet. Carter looked at where the face of Warlord Al now showed fear instead of arrogance. "You surrender," Carter said slowly. "Interesting. 10 minutes ago you were going to sell our children into slavery. Now you ask for mercy." Al's voice trembled. "I was wrong. I did not understand. Please let us go." Carter considered the request. Then he looked at Morgan. "Prepare the boarding teams," he said. "We're not finished here." Smoke drifted through the corridors of the ironclad as damage control teams rushed to seal hull breaches. The battle had been short but violent. 4 ships were now nothing but debris floating in the darkness of space. 2 more remained, their weapons silent, waiting to see what the humans would do next. On the bridge, Captain Daniel Carter studied the tactical display. The 2 surviving enemy vessels sat motionless before him. Al's flagship was the larger of the 2, a massive warship covered in dark armor and the symbols of conquest. The smaller escort ship hung beside it like a frightened child hiding behind its parent. "Status report," Carter ordered. Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan checked her screens. "Shields at 61% and recharging. Hull damage is contained. No casualties among the crew. The civilians are shaken but unharmed." Carter allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. His ship had performed exactly as designed. His crew had fought with skill and courage, but the work was not yet done. "Sir," Ensign Torres spoke up from Tactical, "the escort ship is trying to move. It looks like they're charging their hyperdrive." Morgan turned sharply. "They're trying to escape." Carter watched the escort ship on the display. Its captain was attempting to flee while the humans focused on the flagship. It was a smart move. The escort could jump to hyperspace and warn the rest of the Dominion about what had happened here. But Carter had no intention of letting that happen. "Deploy the hunter drones," he said calmly. Chief Petty Officer entered the command. 6 small hatches opened along the ironclad's hull, and from each one emerged a sleek metal drone about the size of a motorcycle. These were autonomous weapons, each carrying a single warhead and guided by advanced tracking systems. The drones shot forward like arrows from a bow. The escort ship's captain saw them coming on his sensors. He pushed his engines harder, desperate to reach the speed needed for hyperspace travel. He never made it. The first drone struck the escort ship's engine array, disabling its hyperdrive. The second and third drones hit the weapon systems, ensuring the ship could not fight back. The remaining drones circled the crippled vessel like sharks around a wounded fish. "Escort ship is disabled," Torres reported. "They're not going anywhere." Carter turned his attention back to the flagship. On the Warlord Al's face was pale with fear. The proud conqueror who had laughed at humanity just minutes ago now looked like a cornered animal. "You have destroyed my fleet," Al said, his voice hollow. "What more do you want from me?" Carter stepped forward. "I want you to understand something, Warlord. When you attacked this ship, you thought you were hunting easy prey. You thought humans were weak. You thought we would surrender and beg for our lives." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You were wrong." In the lower decks of the ironclad, a team of Marines was preparing for battle. Gunnery Sergeant Hayes checked her rifle one more time as her squad gathered around her. She was a woman of 35 years, with short brown hair and eyes that had seen combat on 6 different worlds. "Listen up," she said to her team. "We're boarding that flagship. Our mission is to secure the bridge and capture the enemy commander alive. Everyone else is a valid target." Private First Class Danny Cole, the youngest member of the squad, raised his hand. "Sergeant, what do we know about their defenses?" Hayes pulled up a holographic display of the enemy ship. Warships typically carry between 50 and 80 crew members. They'll be armed with energy pistols and close combat weapons. Their armor is decent but not great. Hit them hard and fast and they'll break. Corporal Maria Santos checked the charge on her weapon. What about the slaves they might have on board? It was a good question. Ships often carried prisoners from previous raids, innocent people who had been taken from their homes and families. "If we find any prisoners, we protect them," Hayes said firmly. "That's non-negotiable." The squad nodded in understanding. They were soldiers, but they were also human. They would not leave innocent people behind. Back on the bridge, Carter was giving final instructions to Morgan. "I want the flagship taken intact if possible. Their computer systems will contain information about other operations, slave camps, raiding routes, everything." Morgan understood, "And if they resist?" "Then we do what we have to do." The ironclad moved closer to the flagship. On the enemy bridge, Al watched the human ship approach and felt something he had not experienced in many years. He felt afraid. His second-in-command, a warrior named, stood beside him. "Warlord, we should fight. We still have weapons. We still have warriors." Al shook his head slowly. "You saw what they did to our fleet. 4 ships destroyed in minutes. Their weapons cut through our armor like it was nothing." "Then we die with honor," insisted. "Honor?" Al laughed bitterly. "There is no honor in dying for nothing. If we fight, we all die. If we surrender, perhaps some of us will live." His expression showed disgust. "You would surrender to prey." Al grabbed by the throat, his claws digging into the warrior's scales. "They are not prey," he hissed. "We made a mistake, a terrible mistake. The intelligence reports were wrong. These humans are not weak diplomats who avoid conflict. They are warriors, dangerous warriors." He released and turned back to The human ship was now directly alongside the flagship. He could see hatches opening on its hull. "They're coming," he said quietly. The boarding pods launched from the ironclad and crossed the gap between the ships in seconds. They struck the flagship's hull with heavy impacts, and cutting torches began burning through the armor. Inside the first pod, Hayes and her squad waited in darkness. The torch finished its work, and a section of enemy hull fell away. "Go, go, go," Hayes shouted. The Marines poured into the ship, weapons raised and ready. They moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, checking corners and covering each other's movements. A warrior appeared ahead, raising his weapon to fire. Santos put him down with 2 shots to the chest before he could pull the trigger. "Contact eliminated," she reported calmly. More enemy warriors appeared, rushing to defend their ship. The corridor filled with the sound of gunfire and the screams of the wounded. The Marines pushed forward step by step, leaving bodies in their wake. Hayes led from the front, as she always did. She kicked open a door and found 3 soldiers trying to set up a defensive position. She shot the first one, knocked the second one down with the butt of her rifle, and put the third one in a chokehold until he stopped struggling. "Bridge is 2 levels up," she called to her team. "Let's move." On the ironclad's bridge, Carter watched the Marine icons moving through the enemy ship on his tactical display. They were making good progress. It would not be long now. "Sir," Torres said, "the escort ship is trying to send a distress signal." Carter considered this for a moment. "Jam it. No one leaves. No one calls for help. This ends here." His fingers moved across his console, and the escort ship's communications went dead. Outside, among the stars, The debris of 4 destroyed warships drifted slowly through the void. They had come to this place expecting an easy victory. They had found something very different. They had found humanity. The corridors of the flagship were filled with smoke and the smell of burnt metal. Emergency lights flickered red, casting strange shadows on the walls. Somewhere in the distance, alarms screamed warnings that no one was left to hear. Gunnery Sergeant Hayes moved through the chaos with her squad close behind. They had fought their way through 3 decks of enemy resistance. Bodies lay scattered along their path. The aliens had fought hard, but they had not fought smart. They had charged at the Marines with rage and desperation, and they had paid the price. "Bridges ahead," Corporal Maria Santos reported, checking her scanner. 20 meters through that door. Hayes raised her fist, signaling the squad to stop. She studied the heavy door that blocked their path. It was sealed tight, designed to protect the most important room on the ship. "Cole, get up here with the breaching charge," she ordered. Private First Class Danny Cole rushed forward, carrying a small explosive device. His hands were steady as he attached it to the door's locking mechanism. The squad took cover around the corner. "Fire in the hole," Cole said, pressing the trigger. The explosion was loud but controlled. The door blew inward, crashing to the floor with a heavy clang. Hayes was through the opening before the smoke had cleared. The bridge of the flagship was large and impressive, filled with advanced equipment and multiple crew stations. But most of the stations were empty now. Only a handful of aliens remained, standing in the center of the room around a figure seated in a command chair. Warlord Al looked up as the humans entered his bridge. His yellow eyes showed no surprise. He had known they were coming. He had heard the gunfire getting closer and closer until it stopped right outside his door. "Drop your weapons," Hayes commanded, her rifle aimed directly at the warlord's head. The warriors around Al hesitated. Their hands moved toward their sidearms. "I would not do that," Hayes said calmly. "My squad has killed 30 of your crew in the last 8 minutes. We can add a few more to the count." Al raised one clawed hand. "Stand down," he ordered his guards. "It is over." One by one, the warriors dropped their weapons to the floor. Santos and Cole moved forward to secure them, binding their hands with heavy restraints. Hayes approached the warlord slowly, keeping her weapon trained on him. Up close, she could see the age in his scales and the weariness in his eyes. He was old for his species, and he had lived a life of violence and cruelty. "Warlord Al," she said, "you are now a prisoner of the United Earth Navy. You will be transported to Earth to face trial for crimes against sentient species." Al let out a small laugh, though there was no humor in it. "Crimes? Yes. I suppose by your standards I have committed many crimes. By my standards I have simply done what the strong do to the weak." "That's one way to look at it," Hayes replied. "Another way is that you kidnapped innocent people and sold them as slaves. You destroyed families. You caused suffering across dozens of worlds." The warlord shrugged his massive shoulders. "The universe is cruel. I did not make it so." Hayes felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. She was a professional. She would not let this creature see her emotion. "Get him up," she ordered. "We're taking him back to the ironclad." Cole and another Marine pulled Al from his chair and secured his hands. The warlord did not resist. He walked quietly between his captors, his head held high despite his defeat. As they moved toward the exit, Santos called out from across the bridge. "Sergeant, I found something. There's a lower deck marked as cargo hold, but my scanner shows life signs. Lots of them." Hayes felt her stomach tighten. She knew what that meant. "Cole, take the warlord back to the shuttle. Santos, you're with me." They found the cargo hold 3 levels below the bridge. The door was locked, but Hayes shot out the control panel and forced it open manually. What she saw inside made her blood run cold. Dozens of people were crammed into metal cages. Men, women, and children from multiple species. Their clothes were torn and dirty. Their faces showed fear, exhaustion, and lost hope. They shrank back from the door when it opened, expecting more cruelty from their captors. "We're human," Hayes said softly, lowering her weapon. "We're here to help you. You're safe now." A woman near the front of the nearest cage began to cry. Others reached their hands through the bars, desperate for any contact that was not violent. Santos started working on the cage locks while Hayes called the ironclad on her communicator. "Captain Carter, we've secured the bridge and captured the warlord. But sir, there are prisoners here, at least 50 of them. They're going to need medical attention." Carter's voice came back immediately. "Understood, Sergeant. Medical teams are on the way. Well done." It took nearly an hour to free all the prisoners and transport them to the ironclad. The ship's medical bay quickly overflowed, and additional care stations were set up in the cargo areas. Doctors and nurses worked without rest, treating injuries and providing comfort to people who had suffered terrible things. Captain Carter stood in the medical bay, watching the rescued prisoners being cared for. A young alien girl, no more than 8 years old by human standards, sat on a bed nearby. She was thin and pale, and her eyes had the empty look of someone who had seen too much darkness. Carter walked over and knelt beside her bed. "Hello," he said gently. "What's your name?" The girl looked at him with suspicion at first, then slowly she answered, "Myra." "That's a beautiful name, Myra. My name is Daniel. I'm the captain of this ship." Myra's eyes moved to the window, where stars drifted slowly past. "Are the bad ones gone?" "Yes," Carter said. "They can't hurt you anymore. We're going to take you somewhere safe." For the first time, something like hope appeared in the girl's eyes. "Promise." Carter placed his hand gently on hers. "I promise." In the ship's brig, Warlord Al sat alone in a cell. The walls were solid metal with no windows. A force field hummed across the doorway, preventing any escape. He had gone from ruling a fleet of warships to sitting in a cage smaller than the ones he had kept his slaves in. The door to the brig opened, and Captain Carter entered. The two leaders faced each other through the force field. "Your trial will take place on Earth," Carter said. "You will answer for everything you've done." Al smiled bitterly. "I have been to Earth. In my youth I studied your species from a distance. Your cities, your art, your history. I thought I understood you." "What did you think you understood?" "I saw a species that fought endless wars against itself. I saw creatures capable of great evil toward their own kind. But I also saw that you always eventually stopped. You always chose peace in the end. I thought that meant you were soft." Carter waited for him to continue. "I understand now that I was wrong," Al said. "You are not soft. You are simply waiting for an enemy worthy of your full fury. When you found that enemy, you did not hold back." "We protect our own," Carter replied simply. "Anyone who threatens our people will face the consequences." Al nodded slowly. "I will tell you something, Captain. My people have been raiding this region of space for 200 years. We have conquered dozens of species. Some fought, most did not. But none of them, not one, has ever done what you did today." He looked up, meeting Carter's eyes. "Your species frightens me now, and I think perhaps the rest of the galaxy should be frightened too." Carter turned and walked away without responding. There was nothing more to say. 2 weeks had passed since the battle in the Vega corridor. The USS Ironclad had completed its mission, delivering 300 colonists safely to New Providence Colony. The families had stepped off the ship onto their new world, grateful and still slightly amazed that they had survived. Captain Daniel Carter stood at the observation deck, watching the colony grow smaller as the Ironclad began its journey back to Earth. The ship was not traveling alone. Behind it, connected by towing beams, was the captured flagship, a prize of war, now property of the United Earth Navy. Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan appeared beside him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Carter, and they stood together in comfortable silence for a moment. "The crew performed well," Morgan said finally, "above and beyond expectations." Carter nodded. "They did. I've recommended commendations for everyone on the bridge crew, Torres especially. He's got a future in tactical command if he wants it." "What about Hayes and her Marines?" "The Admiralty has already contacted me about her. They want her to lead the new boarding specialist training program back on Earth. She'll be shaping the next generation of Marine combat teams." Morgan smiled slightly. "She'll hate being behind a desk." "She'll adapt. Good soldiers always do." Outside the windows, the stars seemed peaceful and calm. It was hard to believe that this same stretch of space had been a battlefield just days ago. The debris from the destroyed ships had been collected, and the bodies of the enemy dead had been stored for return to there, a gesture of respect that Carter felt was important even toward enemies. In the medical bay, the rescued prisoners were slowly recovering. Doctors reported that most would make full physical recoveries, though the emotional wounds would take longer to heal. Arrangements had been made to return them to their home worlds, or, for those who had no homes left, to find them new places to live. The little girl named Myra had become something of a favorite among the crew. She followed the medical staff around, asking questions about everything she saw. The terror was slowly fading from her eyes, replaced by the natural curiosity of childhood. Carter had received word that a family on New Providence had already offered to adopt her. She would have a new home, a new beginning. She would grow up knowing that humans had saved her when all hope seemed lost. News of the battle had spread quickly across the galaxy. The ironclad sensors had recorded everything, and within hours of their arrival at New Providence, the footage had been transmitted to Earth Command. From there, it had found its way to news networks and diplomatic channels throughout known space. The reaction had been immediate and powerful. On Earth, the video of the battle was shown on every major news channel. Citizens watched in amazement as a single human escort ship destroyed 4 warships and captured 2 more. Politicians praised the crew's bravery. Military analysts studied the tactics, impressed by the combination of technology and skill. But the most significant reactions came from beyond human space. The Dominion officially all raiding parties from human space lanes within 48 hours of receiving the news. Their government issued a statement expressing deep regret for the unprovoked attack and promising full cooperation with the upcoming trial of Warlord Al. Behind closed doors, leaders were panicking. They had believed humans were a minor power, not worth serious consideration. The destruction of an entire raiding fleet by a single cargo escort had shattered that belief completely. If this was what humans could do with 1 ship, what could they do with 100, with 1,000? Other species took notice as well. The Confederation, a powerful alliance that had been expanding aggressively toward human space, suddenly became very interested in diplomacy. Their ambassadors requested urgent meetings with Earth representatives, hoping to establish peaceful relations before any misunderstandings could occur. The Empire, ancient enemies of the, sent private messages to human intelligence agencies. They offered information, trade deals, and even military cooperation. They had been fighting for centuries and had never achieved a victory as complete as what the humans had accomplished in minutes. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, 2 diplomats from a neutral species called the SAT together in a private meeting room. They were reviewing the battle footage for the 20th time, trying to understand what it meant for the balance of power in the region. "This changes everything," the first diplomat said. "The humans have shown themselves capable of violence on a scale we did not expect." The second diplomat leaned back in his chair. "They sent a cargo ship against 6 warships, a cargo ship, and they won. Not just won, they dominated, they barely managed to scratch them." There was a long silence as both diplomats considered the implications. "I have studied human history," the second diplomat said slowly. Their entire existence has been shaped by conflict. They fought each other for thousands of years. World wars, nuclear threats, constant struggles for power. They are perhaps the most violent species to ever achieve. Yet they also show mercy. They could have destroyed both remaining ships. Instead, they took prisoners. They rescued the slaves. Their captain treated the enemy commander with a degree of respect. That is what makes them truly dangerous, the second diplomat replied. They are not mindless killers. They are strategic. They know when to fight and when to show restraint. That combination is far more frightening than simple brutality. The first diplomat pulled up a star chart showing human territory. It was small compared to older empires, just a few dozen systems connected by trade routes and defended by a modest fleet. Should we be concerned? He asked. I think we should be very careful. The humans are still young as species go. They are still growing, still learning their place in the galaxy. But today, they sent a message to everyone watching. What message? The second diplomat pointed at the frozen image of the ironclad on the screen. The ship looked ordinary, unremarkable, just another cargo vessel among thousands. That message is, do not judge us by what we appear to be. Judge us by what we can become when threatened. Back on the ironclad, Captain Carter finished his coffee and set down the empty cup. The ship was 3 days from Earth, where he would face interviews, debriefings, and more attention than he wanted. Morgan noticed his expression. Something on your mind, sir? Carter watched the stars for another moment before answering. I'm thinking about what Al said, about the galaxy being frightened of us now. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. We didn't start this fight. We never wanted to be warriors. We wanted to explore, to build colonies, to meet new species and learn from them. And we still can, Morgan said. But now they know that if they come for our people, there will be consequences. Carter nodded slowly. I suppose that's all we can ask for, the right to live in peace, protected by the ability to make war. The ironclad continued its journey through the darkness between stars. Inside its hull, 300 souls rested peacefully, no longer afraid of what waited in the shadows. Outside, in the cold and silent void, the debris of the fallen fleet drifted slowly through eternity. A warning to all who would threaten humanity. A promise to all who needed protection. A message delivered clearly and without words. We are here, we are watching, and we will never surrender. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter as the human ship sailed home.